Chapter 5. In the low-ceilinged canteen, deep underground, the lunch queue jerked slowly forward. The room was already very full and deafeningly noisy. From the grill, that is not grill. How do you write? How do you read that?
Grill.
Grill. Oh my god, am I losing my mind? A grating or screen, a grate or screen of metal bars or wires placed in front of something as okay, that's grill. Okay, I don't give a shite. From the grill at the counter, the steam of stew came pouring forth. I just can't believe I didn't know how to read grill. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. La la la. Steam came from pouring forth with a sour metallic smell which did not quite overcome the fumes of Victory gin. On the far side of the room there was a small bar, a mere hole in the wall, where gin could be bought at 10 cents the large nib. Just the man I was looking for, said a voice at Winston's back. Just the man I was looking for. He turned around. It was his friend Siam, I don't know, who worked in the research department. Perhaps friend was not exactly the right word. You did not have friends nowadays, you have comrades. But there were some comrades whose society was pleasanter than that of others. Siam, if I'm reading that right, it's killing me. I have to look it up. Siam, I don't know. Siam. How do you pronounce that? What is Siam? I don't care. I don't care. I don't care. Was a philologist. Ew. A philologist. A specialist in newspeak, indeed. He was one of the enormous team of experts now engaged in compiling the 11th edition of the Newspeak Dictionary. He was a tiny creature smaller than Winston, with dark hair and large protuberant eyes. Protuberant eyes. I don't know that, but I assume from the context. At once mournful and derisive. God, what are those words? Derisive, dude. I don't know anything. I don't know anything. Expressing contempt or ridicule. What?
Derisive.
I don't know that one. Derisive. Mournful. Derisive. Protuberant eyes. Protuberant eyes. At once mournful and derisive. Oh, interesting. Which seemed to search your face closely while he was speaking to you. I hate when people do that. So creepy. I wanted to ask you whether you'd got any razor blades, he said. No, not one, said Winston with a sort of guilty haste. I've tried all over the place. They don't exist any longer. 'Cause they're British. Everyone kept asking you for razor blades, actually. Actually, he had two unused ones, which he was hoarding up. There had been a famine of them for months past. At any given moment there was some necessary article which the party shops were unable to supply. Sometimes it was buttons, sometimes it was darning wool, sometimes it was shoelaces. At present it was razor blades. You could only get hold of them, if at all, by scrolling more or less furtively on the free market. I've been using the same blade for 6 weeks, he added untruthfully. The queue gave another jerk forward. As they halted, he turned and faced Syme again. Each of them took a greasy metal tray from a pile at the end of the counter. Did you go and see the prisoners hanged yesterday? Said Syme. I was working, said Winston indifferently. I shall see it on the flicks, I suppose. A very inadequate substitute, said Syme. He mocked eyes roved his mocking eyes roved over Winston's face. I know you. The eyes seemed to say, I see through you. God, this is so creepy. I know very well why you didn't go to see those prisoners hanged. In an intellectual way, Syme was venomously orthodox. He would talk with a disagreeable gloating satisfaction of helicopter raids on enemy villages, and trials and confessions. Hey Siri. Hey Siri. Hey Siri, you worthless pig. Hey Siri, start the stopwatch. Genuinely hate her. And trials and confessions of thought criminals. The executions in the cellar of the Ministry of Law. Talking to him was largely a matter of getting him away from such subjects and entangling him, if possible, in technicalities of newspeak, on which he was authoritative. Authoritative. He was authoritative and interesting. Winston turned his head a little aside to avoid the scrutiny of the large dark eyes. My goodness. It was a good hanging, said Syme reminiscently. I think it spoils it. I think it spoils it when they tie their feet together. Oh my god, this guy's a fucking weirdo. I like to see them kicking. This is so British. And above all, at the end, the tongue sticking right out. Oh my god. And blue. And blue. Ugh, a quite bright blue. Ugh, I hate him. I hate him. That's the detail that happened that appeals me to me. Next, please, yelled the white proud prowl with the ladle. Winston and Syme pushed their trays beneath the grill. On to each was dumped swiftly the regulation lunch. A metal pannikin, if I know what that is, of pinkish grey stew, a hunk of bread, a cube of cheese, a mug of milkless Victory coffee. And when I don't know what that means. Table. Do I need to Google this word? I don't know. That is not what I wrote, was it? I don't know.
Saccharine.
Saccharine. Excessively sweet or sentimental. Okay, terrible word. I'm not using that ever. Saccharine table. What does that mean? What? Sweet table? Sentimental table? I don't know. There's a table over there under the telescreen, said Syme. Let's pick up a gin on the way. The gin was served out to them in handless china mugs. They threaded their way across the crowded room and unpacked their trays onto the metal-topped table, on one corner of which someone had left a pool of stew, a filthy liquid mess that had appearance of vomit. God Lord, why is he so good at writing the most disgusting things, most disgusting sights, most disgusting smells? Ick, you know? Winston took up his mug of gin, paused for an instant to collect his nerve, and gulped the oily tasting stuff down. What? Why is it oily? When he had winked the tears out of his eyes, he suddenly discovered that he was hungry. He began swallowing spoonfuls of the stew, which, in among its general sloppiness, had cubes of spongy. Oh my god, I can't do that. Oh, I can't do that. I do not like pieces in liquid foods, if that makes sense. I don't. Oh, I'm gonna fall. I know that. Pinkish stuff, which was probably a preparation of meat. Preparation of meat. Ugh. Oh my god. Neither of them spoke again till they had emptied their pannikins from the table. At Winston's left, a little behind his back, someone was talking rapidly and continuously. A harsh gabble, almost like the quaking of a duck, which pierced the general uproar of the room. "How is the dictionary getting on?" said Winston, raising his voice to overcome the noise. "Slowly," said Simon. "I'm on the adjectives, bro. It's fascinating." He had brightened up immediately at the mentioning of Newspeak. He pushed his his pannikin aside, which I genuinely don't know what that is, by the way. Like the tray, right? Isn't that their tray? I don't know. A small drinking cup.
Pannikin.
Oh god, they drank their food. Aside, both of them. I thought just our boy. Aside, took up his hunk of bread in one delicate hand and his cheese in the other, and leaned across the table so as to be able to speak without shouting. "The 11th edition is a definite edition," he said. "We're getting the language into its final shape, the shape it's going to have when nobody speaks anything else. When we've finished with it, people like you will have to learn it all over again. You think I dare say that our chief job is inventing new words, but not a bit of it. We're destroying words. Scores of them, hundreds of them, every day. We're cutting the language down to the bone. The 11th edition won't contain a single word that will become obsolete before the year 2050. He bit hungrily into his bread, and swallowed a couple of mouthfuls, then continued speaking with a sort of pedant passion, or pedants, I don't know what that is. Is this a, who is that? I don't know. I don't know philosophy. I'm not good at, I don't like philosophy, to be honest with you. What is a pedant? I thought it was a person. What is the pedant? What is that? What? Learn English? What is a pedantic person? An irritating person who is eager to correct small errors. I love it. Others make. I love it. I love a great word. But I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right. With a sort of pedant's passion. I love that. His thin dark face had become animated. His eyes had lost their mocking expression and grew almost dreamy. It's a beautiful thing. The destruction of words. Of course, the great wastage is in the verbs and adjectives, but there are hundreds of nouns that can be got rid of as well. It isn't only the synonyms, there are also the antonyms. After all, what justification is there for a word which is simply the opposite of some other word? A word contains its opposite in itself. Take good, for instance. If you have a word like good, what need is there for a word like bad, ungood? Will do just as well. Better because it's an exact opposite. Sorry, ungood will do just as well. Better because it's an exact opposite. God, this is like a retard talking. Oh my god, the rape of a language. Which the other is not. Or again, if you want a stronger version of good, what sense is there in having a whole string of vague, useless words like excellent and splendid and all the rest of them plus good? What is this inkiness? Oh, plus good covers the meaning of double plus good. Meaning or double plus good. This is so 13-year-old shit. You know, if someone said that to me, I would genuinely vomit. If you want something stronger still, of course we use those forms already, but in the final version of Newspeak, there will be nothing else. In the end, the whole nation of goodness and badness will be covered by only 6 words. In reality, only 1 word. Don't you see the beauty of that, Wilson? Winston, whatever his fucking name is. It was BB's idea originally. Of course, he added as an afterthought a sort of vapid eagerness flitted across Winston's face at the mention of Big Brother. A sort of vapid eagerness flitted. Okay. Nevertheless, Syme immediately detected a certain lack of enthusiasm. You haven't a real appreciation of newspeak, Winston, he said almost sadly. Even when you write it, you're still thinking of old speak. I've read some of those pieces that you write in the Times occasionally. They're good enough, but they're translations. In your heart, you'd prefer to stick to old speak with all its vagueness and its useless shades of meaning. You don't grasp the beauty of the destruction of words. This guy's a psychopath. Do you know that you speak? New speak. Okay, I gotta know. Because I don't know what chapter I was like, is it news speak or is it new speak? Because, it's new speak. Alright. Do you know that? I'm sorry. I feel like the other version is more Gen Z. Like Newspeak is Gen Z-ish. Anyways. Is the only language in the world whose vocabulary gets smaller every year. Winston did know that, of course. He smiled sympathetically. He hoped, not trusting himself to speak. Siam bit off another fragment of the dark-colored bread, chewed it briefly, and went on. Don't you see that the whole aim of newspeak is to narrow the range of thought? The dumbass said that? Okay, he's with that. In the end, we shall make thought crime literally impossible. Yay, more dumb people. Because there will be no words in which to express it. Every concept, that sounds like such, oh yeah, it's like you're locking me in my brain. Oh, this is so crazy. Because there will be no words in which to express it. Every concept that can ever be needed will be expressed by exactly one word, which its meaning rigidly defined and all its subsidiary. Oh my god, subsidiary, subsidiary, subsidi. I get it. I get the word. I don't care if I say it wrong. Meanings rubbed out. No, you need to learn. God damn education. God damn education.
Subsidiary.
Subsidiary. I wasn't even close. I was less important then, but related. Define and all its subsidiary meanings rubbed out and forgotten. Already in the 11th edition, we're not far from that point, but the process will still be continuing long after you and I are dead. Every year, fewer and fewer words, and the range of consciousness always a little smaller. Even now, of course, there is no reason to excuse for committing thought crime. It's merely a question of self-discipline, reality control, but in the end, there won't be any need even for that. The revolution will be complete when the language is perfect. Newspeak is England or English socialism, and English socialism is newspeak. He added with a sort of mystical satisfaction. Has it ever occurred to you, Winston, that by the year 2050, at the very latest, not a single human being will be alive who could understand such a conversation as we are having now, except began Winston doubtfully, and he stopped. Begun Winston doubtfully, and he stopped. It had been on the tip of his tongue to say, except the proles. I don't know what that means. What the hell are proles? So annoying when you effing have to Google genuinely everything. I'm sorry, but that's my life. Remember
Prole.
class. Okay, I did not know that. Except the proles. But he checked himself, not feeling fully certain that this remark was not in some way unorthodox. Syme, however, had divined what he was about to say. The proles are not human beings, he said carelessly. By 2050 earlier, probably, all real knowledge of old speak will have disappeared. The whole literature of the past will have been destroyed. Okay, I don't know English literature too much, so I don't know his name. Chaser? Shakespeare? Milton? Byron? They will exist only in Newspeak versions. Not merely changed into something different, but actually changed into something contradictory of what they used to be. Even the literature party will change. Even the slogans will change. How could you have a slogan like freedom is slavery when the concept of freedom has been abolished? Interesting. The whole climate of thought will be different. In fact, there will be no thought. As we understand it now, orthodoxy means not thinking, not needing to think. Orthodoxy is unconsciousness. One of these days, thought Winston with sudden deep conviction, time will be vaporized. He is too intelligent. He sees too clearly and speaks too plainly. The party does not like such people. One day he will disappear. It is written in his face. I'm confused. Doesn't he like the party? I get that he's smarter the way he's talking. What's up? The good old chatty. I'm typing with one hand, so that's why it's a bit slow. Yeah, bro, simple man. I don't want to read all that. I got a book to read. Stop. Sure, he's a simple. Time likes that freedom and thinking are being abolished. Likes that freedom and thinking are being abolished. He believes people shouldn't think. He says true orthodoxy means nothing at all. Winston realizes this is dangerous. Simon is too smart. And okay, but why would they kill him? I don't know how to type that. It's exactly what that makes so chilling. Oh, shut up, man. Time. Oh my god, no. Don't spoil. Don't spoil, you donkey. You're such a. Ah! I hate you. Got it, don't spoil it. So just simply Winston thinks time. I know that. I read that because he's too. I got that and talks too much. Okay, so. Okay, so even if he's with them, they would kill him because he's smart. Okay. But I wanted a more. I want to read more about like, why don't they use him? Like he's clearly with. I don't give a shit. You know what? Who cares? Winston had finished his bread and cheese. He turned a little sideways in his chair to drink his mug of coffee. At the table of his left, the man with the strident voice was still talking oh my god, remorselessly away. A young woman who was perhaps his secretary and who was sitting with her back to Winston was listening to him and seemed to be eagerly agreeing with everything that he said. From time to time, Winston caught some such remark as, "I think you're so right. I do so agree with you," uttered in a youthful and rather silly feminine voice, but the other voice never stopped for an instant. God. Even when the girl was speaking, Winston knew the man by sight. Though he knew no more about him than that he held some foreign place in the figure. He was a man of about 30 with a muscular throat and a large mobile mouth. His head was thrown back a little, and because of the angle at which he was sitting, his spectacles caught the light and presented to Winston two blank discs instead of eyes. Okay, he's a bit robotic. That was slightly horrible. Was that from the stream of sound that poured out of his mouth? It was almost impossible to distinguish a single word. Just once Winston caught a phrase, complete and final elimination of Goldsteinism, jerked out very rapidly, and as it seemed, all in one piece like a line of typecast solid. For the rest, it was just a noise, a quack quack quacking, and yet though you could not actually hear what the man was saying, you could not be in any doubt about its general nature. He might be denouncing Goldstein and demanding sterner measures against thought criminals and saboteurs. He might be fulminating against the atrocities of the Eurasian army. He might be praising Big Brother or the heroes on the Malabar front. It made no difference. Whatever it was, you could be certain that every word of it was pure orthodoxy, pure English socialism. As he watched the eyeless face with the jaw moving rapidly up and down, Winston had a curious feeling that this was not a real human being, but some kind of dummy. I think the line about the glasses being, his eyes being discs was enough. It was not the man's brain that was speaking, it was his larynx. Larynx, I have no idea what that is.
Larynx.
Larynx. The hollow muscular organ forming an air passage to the lungs. What? Holding the vocal cords in the human and other mammals. The voice box. Okay, god damn it, just say that. The stuff that was coming out of him consisted of words, but it was not speech in the true sense. It was a noise uttered in unconsciousness, like the quacking of a duck. Syme had fallen silent for a moment, and with the handle of his spoon was tracing patterns in a puddle of stew. The voice from the other table quacked rapidly on, easily audible in spite of the surrounding din. "There is a word in newspeak," said Syme. "I don't know whether you know it. Duck speak. The quack like a duck. It is one of those interesting words that have two contradictory meanings applied to an opponent. It is abuse applied to someone you agree with. It is praise." Unquestionably, Syme will be vaporized. Winston thought again. He thought it with a kind of sadness, although well knowing that Syme despised him and slightly disliked him, and was fully capable of denouncing him as a thought criminal if he saw any reason for doing so. There was something subtly wrong with Syme. There was something that he lacked: destruction, aloofness, a sort of saving stupidity. You could not say that he was unorthodox. He believed in the principles of English socialism. He venerated Big Brother. He rejoiced over victories. He hated heretics, not merely with sincerity, but with a sort of restless zeal, an up-to-dateness of information which the ordinary party member did not approach, yet a faint air of disreputability. Disreputability. Great.
Disreputable.
Okay. Always clung to him. He said things that would have been better unsaid. He had read too many books and frequented the Chestnut Tree Cafe, haunt of painters, painters, and musicians. There was no law, not even an unwritten law, against frequenting the Chestnut Tree Cafe. Yet the place was somehow ill-omened. The old, discredited leaders of the party had been used to gather there before they were finally purged. Goldstein himself, it was said that had sometimes been seen there years and decades ago. Times fate was not difficult to foresee, and yet it was a fact that if Syme grasped even for 3 seconds the nature of his Winston's secret opinions, he would betray him instantly to the thought police. So could anybody else but that matter? But Syme, more than most, zeal was not enough. Zeal was not enough. Orthodoxy was unconsciousness. Syme looked up. Here comes Parsons, he said. Something in the tone of his voice seemed to add, that bloody fool, Parsons. Winston's fellow tenant at Victory Mansions was in fact threading his way across the room, a tubby, middle-sized man with fair hair and a frog-like face. At 35 he was already putting on rolls of fat at neck and waistline, but his movements were brisk and boyish. His whole appearance was that of a little boy, grown large. So much so that although he was wearing the regulation overalls, it was almost impossible not to think of him as being dressed in the blue shorts, grey shirt, and red neckerchief of the spies. In visualizing him, and one saw always a picture of dimpled knees and sleeves rolled back from pudgy forearms. Parsons did indeed invariably revert to shorts when a community hike or any other physical activity gave him an excuse of doing so. He greeted them both with a cheery "Hello." He sat down at the table, giving off an intense smell of sweat. Intense smell of sweat. Beads of moisture stewed out all over his pink face. That's disgusting. His powers of sweating were extraordinary. Oh my god. Oh my god. Just the way he makes things disgusting is so intriguing. At the community center, you could always tell when he had been playing table tennis by the dampness of the bat handle. Syme had produced a strip of paper on which there was a long column of words, and was studying it with an ink pencil between his fingers. "Look at him working away in the lunch hour," said Parsons, nudging Winston. "Keenes, eh? I don't know what that means. Keenes? Keenes? I don't know. What's that you've got there, old boy?" "Something a bit too brainy for me, I expect." Smith, old boy, "I'll tell you why I'm chasing you. It's that sub you forgot to give me." "Which sub's that?" said Winston, automatically feeling for money. About a quarter of one's salary had to be earmarked for voluntary subscriptions, which were so numerous that it was difficult to keep track of them. For Hate Week, the House by House Fund. I'm treasurer for our block. We're making an all-about effort, going to put on oh my god, a tremendous show. I tell you, it won't be my fault if old Victory Mansions don't have the biggest outfit of flags in the whole street. $2, you promised me. Winston found and handed over two creased and filthy notes with Parsons entered in a small notebook. In the neat handwriting of the illiterate. By the way, old boy, he said, I hate that little beggar of mine let fly at you with his catapult yesterday. I gave him a good dressing down for it. In fact, I told him I'd take the catapult away if he does it again. I think he was a little upset at not going to the execution. Said one. Oh well, what I mean to say, shows the right spirit, doesn't it? Mischievous little beggars they are, both of them. But talk about kinness. I think kinness, my kin. Yeah, I know that word. But let's just make sure. The quality of being. And it's not even close to what I thought.
Keenness.
The quality of being eager or enthusiastic eagerness. I'm so sorry. Both of them. But talk about keenness. All they think about is the spies. And the war, of course. Do you know what that little girl of mine did last Saturday? When her troop was on a hike out Berkhamsted way? I don't know how to read that. She got two other girls to go with her, slipped off from the hike, and spent the whole afternoon following a strange man. They kept on his tail for 2 hours right there in the woods, and then when they got into Amersham, handed him over to the patrols. What did they do for that? Said Winston, somewhat taken aback. Parsons went on triumphantly. My kid made sure he was some kind of enemy agent. Might have been dropped by a parachute, for instance. But here's the point, old boy. What do you think put her onto him in the first place? She spotted he was wearing a funny kind of shoe. Said she'd never seen anyone wearing shoes like that before, so the chances were he was a foreigner. Pretty smart for a nipper of 7, eh? What happened to the man? Said Winston. That I couldn't say, of course, but I wouldn't be altogether surprised if Parsons made the motion of aiming a rifle and clicking his tongue to the explosion. Good, said Time abstractedly, without looking up from his strip of paper. Of course we can't afford to take chances, agreed Winston. Dutifully, I don't know. This is not doubt, from the little I know.
Dutifully.
In a conspicuous, conscientious or obedient manner. I don't know if I use the word dutifully. What I mean to say, there is a war on, said Parsons, as though in confirmation of this, a trumpet call floated from the telescreen just above their heads. However, it was not the proclamation of a military victory this time, but merely an announcement from the Ministry of Plenty. Comrades, cried an eager youthful voice. Attention, comrades! We have glorious news for you. We have won the battle of production. Returns now completed. Of the output of all classes of consumption goods show that the standard of living has risen by no less than 20% over the past year. All over Oceania this morning, there were responsible spontaneous demonstrations when workers marched out of factories and offices and paraded through the street with banners voicing their gratitude to Big Brother for the new happy life which his wise leader has bestowed upon us. Here are some of the completed foodstuffs. The phrase "our new happy life" recurred several times. It had been a favorite of late with the Ministry of Plenty. Parsons, his attention caught by the trumpet call, sat listening with a sort of gaping solemnity, whatever, a sort of a defined, I don't know, new words in it. Oh my god, not the A. I want to hear the word. I want to hear. Edification.
Edification.
Edification. Okay. A sort of edification. Or a sort of edified boredom. He could not follow the fingers, but he was aware that they were in some way a cause for satisfaction. He had lodged out a huge and filthy pipe, which was already half full of charred tobacco. With the tobacco ration at 100 grams a week, it was seldom possible to fill a pipe to the top. Winston was smoking a Victory cigarette, which he held carefully horizontal. The new ration did not start till tomorrow, and he had only 4 cigarettes left. For the moment he had shut his ears to the remoter noises. He was listening to the stuff that streamed out of the telescreen. It appeared that there had even been demonstrations to thank Big Brother for raising the chocolate ration to 20 grams a week. And only yesterday, he reflected, it had been announced that the ration was to be reduced to 20 grams a week. Was it possible that they could swallow that after only 24 hours? Yes, they swallowed it. Parsons swallowed it easily with the stupidity of an animal. The eyeless creature at the other table swallowed it fanatically, passionately, with a furious desire to track down, denounce, and vaporize anyone who should suggest that last week the ration had been 30 grams. Syme, too, in some more complex way involving doublethink. Syme swallowed it. Was he then alone in the passion of a memory? The fabulous statistics continued to pour out of the telescreen. As compared with last year, there was more food, more clothes, more houses, more furniture, more cooking pots, more fuel, more of everything except diseases, crime, and insanity. Year by year and minute by minute, everybody and everything was whizzing rapidly upwards. As Syme had done earlier, Winston had taken up his spoon and was dabbling in the pale-colored gravy that dribbled across the table, drawing a long streak of it out into a pattern. He meditated restfully on the physical texture of life. Had it always been like this? Had food always tasted like this? He looked round the canteen, a low-ceilinged, crowded room, its walls grimy from the contact of, oh my god, innumerable bodies, battered metal table and chairs placed so close together that you sat with elbows touching, bent spoons, dented trays, coarse white mugs, all surface greasy grim in every crack, and a sourish composite. What the composite? I don't know. Composite? I don't know.
Composite.
Made up of several parts. Okay. Composite. Small of bad gin and bad coffee and metallic stew and dirty clothes, always in your stomach and in your skin. There was a sort of protest, a feeling that you had been cheated of something that you had a right to. It was true that he had no memories of anything greatly different. In any time that he could accurately remember, there had never been quite enough to eat. One had never had socks or underclothes that were not full of holes. Furniture had always been battered and rickety. Room under heated, tube trains, crowded, houses falling to pieces, bread dark-colored, tea a rarity, coffee filthy, tasted, cigarette insufficient, nothing cheap and plentiful except synthetic gin. And though, of course, it grew worse as one's body aged, was it not a sign that this was not the natural order of things if one's heart sickened at the discomfort and dirt and scarcity, the interminable winters, the sickness of one's socks, the lifts that never worked, that cold water, that the gritty soap, the cigarette that came to pieces, the food with its strange evil taste. Why should one feel it be intolerable unless one had some kind of ancestral memory that the things had once been different? You looked round and the canteen again. Nearly everyone was ugly and would still have been ugly even if dressed otherwise than in the uniform blue overalls. On the far side of the room, sitting at a table alone, a small, curiously beetle-like man was drinking a cup of coffee, his little eyes darting suspicious glances from side to side. How easy it was, though, Winston, if you did not look about you, to believe that the physical type set up by the party as an ideal tall, muscular youth, and deep, boned maidens, blonde-haired, vital, sunburnt, carefree, excited, existed and even predominated. Actually, so far as he could judge, the majority of people in Airstrip 1 were small, dark, and ill-favored. It was curious how that beetle-like type proliferated in the ministry's little dumpy man, growing stout very early in life, with short legs, swift scuttling movements, and fat, inscrutable faces with very small eyes. It was the type that seemed to flourish best under the dominant of the party. Dominion, I don't know. The announcement from the Ministry of Plenty ended on another trumpets calling and gave way to tiny music or tinny music. I don't know. Tinny music. I don't know. Parson, stirred to vague enthusiasm by the bombardment of figures, took his pipe out of his mouth. The Ministry of Plenty's certainly done a good job this year, he said with a knowing shake of his head. By the way, Smith, old boy, I suppose you haven't got any razor blades. You can let me know. You can let me have. Not one, said Winston. I've been using the same blade for 6 weeks myself. Ah, well, just thought I'd ask, old boy. Sorry, said Winston. The quaking voice from the next table, temporarily silenced during the ministry announcement, had started up again as loud as ever. For some reason, Winston suddenly found himself thinking of Mrs. Parsons, with her wispy hair and the dust in the creases of her face. Within 2 years, those children would be denouncing her to the thought police. Mrs. Parsons would be vaporized. Syme would be vaporized. Winston would be vaporized. O'Brien would be vaporized. Parsons, on the other hand, would never be vaporized. The eyeless creature with the quaking voice would never be vaporized. The little beetle-like man who scuttled so nimbly through the labyrinthine corridor of ministries, they too would never be vaporized. And the girl with dark hair, the girl from the fiction department, she would never be vaporized either. It seemed to him that he knew instinctively who would survive and who would perish, though just what it was that made for survival it was not easy to say. At this moment he was dragged out of his reverie, I don't know. Reverie. I don't know.
Reverie.
I got it. A state of being pleasantly lost. Okay, okay. In one's thoughts. I love that word. Reverie. Okay. He was dragged out of his reverie with a violent jerk. The girl at the next table had turned partially round and was looking at him. It was the girl with dark hair. She was looking at him in a sidelong way, but with curious intensity. The instant she caught his eye, she looked away again. The sweat started out on Winston's backbone. A horrible pang of terror went through him. It was gone almost at once, but it left a sort of nagging uneasiness behind him. Why was she watching him? Why did she keep following him about? Unfortunately, he could not remember whether she had already been at the table when he arrived or had come there afterward, but yesterday, at any rate, during the 2-minute hate, she had sat immediately behind him, when there was no apparent need to do so. Quite likely, her real object had been to listen to him and make sure whether he was shouting loudly enough. He's paranoid, I think, I don't know. His earlier thought returned to him. Probably she was not actually a member of the thought police, but then it was precisely the amateur spy who was the greatest danger of all. He did not know how long she had been looking at him, but perhaps for as much as 5 minutes, and it was possibly that his features had not been perfectly under control. It was terribly dangerous to let your thoughts wander when you were in any public place or within range of telescreen. The smallest thing could give you away: a nervous tic, an unconscious look of anxiety, a habit of muttering to yourself, anything that carried with it the suggestion of abnormally, of having something to hide. In any case, to wear an improper expression on your face, to look incredulous when a victory was announced, for example. Incredulous? Was itself a punishable offense. There was even a word for it in Newspeak. Face crime, it was called. The girl had turned her back to him again. Perhaps after all she was not really following him about. Perhaps it was coincidence that she had sat so close to him 2 days running. His cigarette had gone out, and he laid it carefully on the edge of the table. He would finish smoking it after work, if he could keep the tobacco in it. Quite likely the person at the next table was a spy of the thought police. Quite likely he would be in the collar of the Ministry of Love within 3 days, but a cigarette end must not be wasted. Syme had folded up his strip of paper and stowed it away in his pocket. Parsons had begun talking. Again. Did I ever tell you, old boy, he said, chuckling round the stem of his pipe, about the time when those two neighbors of mine set fire to the old market woman's skirt because they saw her wrapping up sausages in a poster of BB? Sneaked up behind her and set fire to it with a box of matches. Burned her quite badly, I believe. Little beggars, huh? But keen as mustard. That's a first-rate training they give them in the spies nowadays. Better than in my day, even. What'd you think the latest thing they've served them out with? Ear trumpets for listening, though, through keyholes. My little girl brought one home the other night. Tried it out in our sitting room door, and reckoned she could hear twice as much as with her ear to the hole. Of course, it's only a toy, mind you. Still give them the right idea, eh? At this moment, the telescreen let out a piercing whistle. It was a signal to return to work. All three men sprang to their feet to join the struggle round the lifts, and the remaining tobacco fell out of Winston's cigarette. Sadly sad. Sadly sad. And that was the end. Like and subscribe. Please comment. Thank you. Bye bye.